Hi there. A YouTube user commented on one of my videos recently saying that he or she did not want to go on living in this world, living here, in this prison of the demiurge. And I had to comment on that. I don't often comment on comments, but I had to comment on that, saying that escape is possible if one does not uh, seek escape, which is somewhat of a contradiction. And then I added that his or her prayer had not been unheard. And there's lots of books in the Bible to do with lamentation about this wicked world, as my grandmother used to call it, and the wickedness of men and women, uh, and the ignorance of spirit, which is abundant uh, in our society. And but I've already discussed. It sounded a bit sort of like a cry for help, really. And sometimes I think that people living in the USA have a lot to cry about, actually. But then I guess people living anywhere in the world have a lot to cry about, whether it's the USA or North Korea or Japan or Germany or whatever. There's always something that's wrong with somewhere in some community or society. So my very first video on this channel was asking the slightly facetious question: why don't Gnostics just commit suicide en masse and have be done with it? But I think suicide. The thing about suicide is that, in a way, the Scorpio energy of this world is already suicidal. In other words, this whole material universe is imploding and is already committing mass suicide with the demiurge at its forefront. And so, therefore, it seems to me that committing suicide is sort of aping the fact that this universe is suicidal on one hand, and committing suicide on the other, slowly but surely. So it sort of is like a contradiction in the sense that it's almost your sacred duty to survive and to live, and to live to your fullmost as well, and to be life affirming rather than life denying, um, because life itself is life denying in a contradictory sort of way. It has that contradiction hard baked into it. And you should not ethically and practically take any part in the suicidal tendencies of this universe, even though, of course, you are on the physical level bound to that suicidal physical universe, if that makes any sense. Certainly, fantasy. We should not escape into a fantasy because that's one of the F demons that feeds on our fantasies. And I suppose intoxication will be part of fantasy. Your feeling of intoxication through drugs and alcohol. It's certainly a fantasy life that you're living, but a life of denial, and a life of self-destruction, which obsession and fantasy often lead to as well. So again, it comes under the sort of heading of not committing suicide, as it were, either slowly or quickly. And then finally, not to escape into blame and blame systems, as one might say. There's lots of political systems based on blame, and we blame each other individually and collectively. We blame ourselves, and that's almost a sort of an escape from our responsibilities to each other and to ourselves. And again, Gnosticism to me is life affirming, even though it's saying that this world is a prison, and a place which is gradually imploding. in a cyclical sort of way. It's imploding in on itself. It's like the Scorpio energy, the Scorpio committing suicide, surrounded by a circle of flame kind of image that is good to hold on to. Um, so what do I mean by escape? In that case, what did I mean by escape when I actually commented on that, replied to that comment? And it suddenly occurred to me that I hadn't really contemplated this word escape. I mean, what does it mean in the context of being in an imploding suicidal universe commanded by the six F demons, which is our reaction to scarcity, basically. Um, and I think on the emotional level, we must accept the sort of raft of emotions and reactions that we do actually have in the face of scarcity and threat and conspiracy, even, and that we are human and fallible, and we have to kind of accept ourselves for who we are. But I think with this acceptance of it's not justification of our various reactions, positive or negative. It's simply that we go into insight into them. We are become aware of our emotional reactions, and through this awareness, to some degree, in any case, we can hold on to our emotional self, to the sort of child within, as it were, despite all the provocation and distraction that occurs in this world. I say that somewhat hypocritically because, for some genetic reason, I'm really, really unable to cope with my emotions and reactions and sense of identity to such an extent that I really do need pharmaceutical drugs in order to stabilize and maintain my emotional balance, stabilize my emotions and maintain the balance that other people find actually quite easy to maintain and through spiritual exercises as well. But I have to admit that spiritual exercises for me are not enough, and I have to recognize that and accept that, you see. So perhaps one escapes into this idea of accepting that we are what we are, and we are full of emotional reactions, such as the dog barking at the postman coming because he feels threatened by the postman, even though the postman comes every other day kind of thing. But I think also it's a sort of game as well that the dog is playing with the idea of threat. So it's a kind of escapism, really, that the dog is indulging in. And it's a kind of escapism which humans indulge in as well, uh, in a sense. So we're not talking about escapism so much as we're talking about escape, which I think has a different meaning, really. But this presentation is only really kind of like a thought in progress or work in progress. I don't really know. I can't really say. So all these sort of balloons that come out from what escape might be, you know, escape. It doesn't. You can't seek escape, which is one of the things I commented on. I think that it may happen, but I don't think it comes through seeking it or desiring it or trying to plan it. It just is. It's unexpected. It happens, and it can't be sought for in the conventional way of seeking something. Perhaps it's something that you find or you don't find, as it were. And so, a bit like gnosis itself, you can't seek gnosis. It seeks you, basically, and it finds you eventually. Which certainly brings on to the other thing about this prison. This prison has doors. You entered into this prison through doors, or various doors, or one door, and there are doors which offer escape from this prison or release from this prison. Perhaps release is a sort of better word than escape, actually, because escape does have connotations of escapism, whereas release is just release. It doesn't have the idea of release. You can't have releaseism, can you? That sort of thing. Do you know what I mean? But it's a comforting thought that what goes up must come down, or what comes, what came through from the other side must go back to the other side in a sort of loop fashion. And this prison has doors. It even has windows, and through which you can peer out at what freedom might be. And then finally, we're looking at then as a contemplation of metaphysics. Philosophy, they say, is a great compensation or great comfort. A metaphysical speculation, reading the Gospels of Philip and the Gnostic Gospels, and contemplating the metaphysics that people have analysed. I mean, I would describe myself as a metaphysician. So I'm looking and analysing the contents of the transcendental, and how it relates to this world. And it may be that some of my ideas are at least provoking, or thought provoking anyway, and could even be comforting in a way. But I think so I think that the contemplation of people's writings, and presentations on YouTube provides a great release from the burden of this world. And then finally, it's the mysterious actions of the Holy Spirit, such as Pentecost. It's the idea that Spirit comes upon you, and at times of great stress and great reaction to what's going on around you. The Holy Spirit can be called upon, and can be called upon daily through the Eucharist, of course, or weekly, even, or weekly or daily, even. And the Holy Spirit is there to provide a certain level of comfort and surety that through the Christ, liberation is not only possible but inevitable, and through inevitable for soul and through soul awareness, as it were. I mean, it will happen, but we will either be there or not there in terms of our consciousness. And if we are there in terms of our consciousness, we will experience the miracle that is liberation. So this is what I mean by escape. But I admit that escapism is rather too close a word to escape, really. And perhaps a better word is release, because there isn't a word releaseism from that as an extension of that word, release. And it's an emotional, intellectual, practical and spiritual release that perhaps we are open to, rather than seeking, as it were. And it will come through the action of the Holy Spirit, through faith, hope, and charity, which are the three pillars, really, of the true Christian faith. The true Christian way and the true Gnostic way, the true Christian Gnostic way. So, as Saint Paul talks about in his epistles. So I hope that certainly this is what I mean by escape, and that these elements of escape is what you will contemplate, rather than obviously going into fantasy and intoxication and blame, and God forbid, suicide. So I hope this is of comfort, some comfort to the person who commented on my video. The problem is that often people comment on individual videos, but they don't subscribe. And therefore, each video that you upload is a thing unto itself. You don't see it in context of other videos put up by the same uploader. which is one of the sort of problems with YouTube generally, I think, really. And therefore people sort of, they don't learn they learn in rather a random sort of way if they learn anything at all. And videos sort of come and go, and it's all pretty fickle, really, in a way. And some people are with you, sort of on your journey, and other people just pick it up and and put it down again. Pick up the gnosis and put it down again, as it were. Well, not the gnosis, but the contemplation of Gnostic ideas, to be more accurate. So anyway, if this video has been watched by this individual, then I hope that it's gone some way to clarify and to comfort, in our hour of need, or lifetime of need.